Up next in our ArtBeast programming, we'll be showcasing a panel led by Rider Professor Linda Lawrence Critelli, as she leads a group of female panelists, all from the music industry, as they discuss ways for female industry leaders to climb. So please be sure to tune in to this. And then following the presentation, we will be having a live Q&A session on Zoom at 4:30. So if you would like to attend that Q&A, please feel free to register for that. And then at 5 o'clock, we will be having our first ever ArtBeast Jeopardy, led by Rider Ames student Ethan Manton, and there will be prizes as well, so please be sure to check into that. And then we will have an hour break, and we will start evening programming at 7 o'clock. So please enjoy our wonderful panel led by Linda Lawrence Critelli.
So, hello everybody. I am Linda Lawrence Critelli. I am an assistant professor in the AIM program. Proud to be here with three fabulous, dynamic women from the music industry. I think most of you know by now, anyone who knows me knows that I come from the music industry. So these are my dear friends, I will say, who are just amazing leaders in the New York City music market. And I'm delighted to have them with us today. And I thought we'd just have a really fun conversation talking about what it's like to work in the music industry, what it's like as a woman in the music industry, and the dynamic changes that are going on today and how we are embracing them and challenged by them and moving forward with them. So I'm going to just introduce my panelists briefly, and then I'm going to turn it over to them to sort of give a bigger in-depth bio of themselves. But I'm going to start with Nita Ragawunsi, whom I've known probably the longest. She's one of my dear friends who I met a long time ago. She's an attorney. She is the global chair of Women in Music, which is an organization all of us are members of. I'm a past president of that organization. So is Nita. She is also the president of the Music Managers Forum because she is so extremely organized and knows all about that. She's the founder of a performing rights organization called NPREX. And she also just took on a very cool job, a job that she's been waiting for. She's been preparing for her whole life. She is the Senior Counsel of Legal and Business Affairs for Global Citizen. Ooh. So that is, Nita, just a couple of things that you're doing. And then I'm going to share with you my other dear friend, Sharon Tapper, from the Pivot Music Group, who is a very close friend of mine. Sharon and I know each other from the publishing business. She worked for Cobalt Music Publishing. She also worked for Razor and Tie Music Publishing. Now she has her own business, Pivot Music Group, which is a creative services company. She offers business development and creative services to independent music publishers, domestically and internationally. When you hear her speak, you will recognize that she is not from here.
Not.
Has a lovely accent. And she's also my co-founder of NYC3, a music organization that we founded several years ago in New York. And she's also on the board of directors for the Recording Academy. And speaking of the Recording Academy, we have Miss Yasmin De Souza, who is a very sweet, dear friend of mine who I've known for a long time. We are former colleagues. We worked together at CSAC. Then she left CSAC and went on to work at Carnegie Hall, where she was the Educational Media and Technology Department leader, where she created this really cool online educational thing before we were all online. And now she's the head of membership for the Recording Academy. And she's also a mom to two little children that are under the age of 2. So for that alone, she's my hero. That's Yasmin De Souza. And I'll let you guys expand on your backgrounds, but I think that sort of gives us a little taste of who you fabulous women are. But I thought that we could just start with the obvious question about being women in the music industry and talk a little bit about what it's like being a woman in the music industry. And Sharon, perhaps you can repeat what you had just said earlier. When how it was when we started.
Well, I mean, we've all been doing this quite a while. I started out 30 years ago, and I used to be the only woman in the room. And I was in my early 20s. So, I remember I would have artists look at me. It's like, how old are you? And I would blatantly lie about my age. And, it just, at that time, it didn't occur to me that there should be more women. It was just like that was just the way it was. When I went on the road on tour, except for maybe, the lead singer, I was the only woman. So, you just navigate it and learn to own your own power, so to speak, and stand your ground. Um, but I saw, certainly other people who kind of fell prey, shall we say. And I'm very grateful for having more women around now, and it's great to be able to have those moments when you just look at at each other and just like roll your eyes and and you just power on. But now it is a force, and I feel very grateful that that dynamic has changed. I also worked in a recording studio and a management company. I did that for many years before getting into publishing.
Oh, right. And obviously, those dynamics are even more different than the office dynamics because it is very male dominated in the recording studios. Even
Mhm.
still, even
Yeah.
still. Nita, how about you? You worked at the Kennedy Center. That's another really cool gig that you had in Washington D.C.
Yeah.
And you worked for Sound Exchange in Washington D.C. Was one of the founding executives for Sound Exchange. You were, always one of the only females leading the pack.
Yeah, at the Kennedy Center, actually, my mentors there were all female, and that was a fabulous, a wonderful thing. And I still keep in touch with those amazing women, especially one of them who was sort of my immediate supervisor, because she's a Harvard Law grad, and she was completely, just absolutely amazing about that very thing Sharon talked about, which is, sort of standing your ground and figuring out how to do that. Um, and 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 there were some other amazing, inspiring women at the Kennedy Center. Who really taught me about bringing, like, owning your femininity and bringing that into the workplace, and saying, you know what, why is the office always brown and black in furniture? It's like there was one wonderful vice president who came in and just changed everything and had pink tablecloths and flowers, and she just stood her ground as owning her femininity and saying it is cool to have color inside of our workplaces, and to say I'm a female, right? And to say I don't need to conform to what seemed to be more of the patriarchy, right? So, or you know what I'm saying. So I do love those experiences that I had. But to dovetail on what Sharon was saying about sort of that we've come a long way, and it is in a sense, right, that we've definitely loved the force that we're seeing now, right,
Oh yeah.
of getting closer to an equitable place, but getting closer. And I do love it. And at the same time, I sit there and I go, we've come a long way from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but there's so much work to do. And so much of what's happening here in the United States, right, is it's the implicit bias stuff. It's the insidious stuff that everyone sort of has about the way they see a female, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's out in the clubs, in the recording studios, versus not, right? That there are certain stereotypes, there's all of these unconscious biases that come out in the way that we kind of start interacting with each other, that do kind of put up hurdles and challenges for the female when she's trying to be at her best. And so I still see them happening, and it is something where we still have to keep our foot on the pedal, because even like in the 1970s, there was an amazing revolution with Gloria Steinem and everyone else
Mhm.
about women's equality, and then into the 80s and the 90s, the foot was taken off the pedal, and that revolution kind of stalled. And with certain forces, with Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In book,
Yeah.
and the Me Too movement, of course, it has put the foot back on the pedal, but we have to make sure not to forget, not to take that foot off, and
Mhm.
keep going with that push towards more diversity, more equity, more inclusion, more of the training that needs to happen inside of more and more companies, more optics around seeing 50% of boards become women, and 50% of senior management in companies are women, and constantly pushing that mission to get there. So
I
anyway.
think that's no, what you say is rings so true. And I know, Yasmin, you're over there going, yeah, 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 because you live this at the Recording Academy. Full
Yeah.
disclosure, everybody, all of us have been involved with the Recording Academy at one time or another. I'm a former chapter president. I'm a current governor. I'm a former trustee. Very involved with the evolution of the Recording Academy, which is really, it's going through a big revolution, addressing all of these issues very aggressively. And perhaps you could speak to that, Yasmin, and even include some of your own personal anecdotes or so about it.
Sure. Yeah. At the Academy right now, and since we've brought on a diversity, inclusion, and equity officer, a C-suite level executive as part of the organization, it has become heightened awareness and goal, frankly, for the organization to include more women, whether it's from our membership level, including more music creators as voting members, including more executives as professional members, including more females at the Grammy U level, which the stats actually show we have more females enrolled as members of Grammy U than males, which I think is kind of a striking statistics, because once you see you go over to the stats on the professional level side of members, we have less women on both sides, voting and professional level. So that's inclusive of music creators and executives. So that's an interesting difference that is occurring there. But
where are there more women in the Recording Academy membership?
In Grammy U.
In Grammy U.
In Grammy U. Yeah.
Young
Yeah.
College students.
Yeah. So that, I think that kind of speaks what might be happening when you have young females go out into the workforce is, are they being included? Is there opportunity? Are they being included? Are there pay inequity issues that are occurring that forces them out of the music workforce? So there's a number of things, there's something happening there when you're looking at the statistics for membership. But it's become a real focus for us.
That's a real revolution to me.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Can I ask a question? Do we track the folks who've gone through Grammy U, the alumni, to find out how many actually do go into the industry?
We do. We do. We're starting to take a closer look at that because the whole purpose of the Grammy U program and that level of membership is really to matriculate the Grammy U members into professional level membership. So we are starting to track it. We're starting to do some survey data so we can have some data to analyze.
That's going to be fascinating.
That's going to be fascinating to learn and see that. I encourage all my students to, especially the music ones naturally, to join Grammy U. I have several Rider students who are Grammy U members, and they really love it. They really love it. It's a great program. Let's just move on a little bit. I wanted to talk about the gender equity issue. Just one more point I wanted to bring in. There was a big push to get to this 50-50 by 2020 gender equity. Of course, that did not happen. And then they pushed it, and of course the pandemic happened, And this was a push to get gender equity in music festivals, in, in boardrooms and so on. And it hasn't really been realized that much. What do you guys have any thoughts on that? You think we'll actually get to a 50-50 gender parity? I know we did in the New York chapter, and that was that's a little easier to do because we're getting volunteers to come on board as opposed to actually going through a hiring process.
Right.
What do you guys, any thoughts on that?
I think the pandemic has put it back by maybe a decade or more, to be perfectly honest, because, if you have children, the odds are you're the one who's had to make more sacrifices for the care of those children during this time. I'm hopeful that it will return and we'll get it back on track, but it's gonna take time. Everything's changed, everything's changing, everything's in flux.
Yeah.
The type of employment even.
I think,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think also when we talk about the culture of the music industry, I think the culture needs to shift in a big way. And that, it comes down to conversation. So I think the other intro that I forgot to mention is I still continue a performance and recording career as a violinist. So I am in the studio, I am collaborating with musicians and bands, and so I am behind the scenes and I'm participating in the creative process, but I'm also there late at night, sometimes listening to the conversations. And I think there needs to be a cultural shift that needs to occur within music that will help us reach this goal that we all want to get to.
Are you saying that the conversations make you uncomfortable?
Sometimes, I mean,
or
yeah, sometimes they're not inclusive. And an example of that is, I work a lot in the hip hop space. So things happen where there's a conversation around, let's debate Jay-Z's album to Nas's album. Let's get into a verbal debate and, talk about it. And, I attempt to throw in my 2 cents, and you can't find a way because for some reason my opinion is not as valued as their opinion. So that's just an example where conversations do become uncomfortable. We have opinions on music, we have opinions on the way a phrasing might need to go, stuff like that, but for some reason a male's opinion is more valued than a female's opinion sometimes. So that's what I'm saying.
Well, that's back to what Nita was saying about, putting your foot down and politely being sort of stern about your position and having an opportunity, when you have an opportunity to speak. I know sometimes I've experienced being stepped over in conversation sometimes throughout my career as a woman in a boardroom.
I find it tends to happen less now, but
Yeah.
I would imagine in a studio, especially, I have to say, in a hip hop studio, yeah, I can see that. I don't know. I think we've all been in meetings where we'll bring something up and then somebody will say the same thing and they're like, that's a great idea. It's like, didn't I just say that? It's like, whoa.
Well,
echo.
There's nothing more, I've experienced that too many times to even tell you. There's nothing more important to me than having a really good friend and to having your friends as your partners, like all you girls are to me in our industry, especially when you're coming up. And I don't know, I would have never gotten where I got if I had not had girlfriends with me to go out with, to be my buddies on the beat, and when you do work in the music industry or any industry, dealing with entertainment, you're going out. It's not 9 to 5, it's going out and being seen, going to see shows, going to industry panel discussions, networking events that they end up being networking events, going to events, going to the Grammy Awards, going to these things. And it's always great to go with somebody else. Can you girls talk about what it's been like for you in, and how important it is,
Yeah, no, good point, Linda, because networking and relationships really matter. It really does make a difference to your business, to your careers, and it really enhances so much of that. And those relationships and that networking should be easy. It shouldn't actually be hard work or intimidating or a bunch of stuff that I used to feel in my 20s when I finally moved to New York, and I came from Washington D.C. and that Kennedy Center stuff and all that. And I came to New York, I met the lovely, including you, the Women in Music crew. And that organization, that nonprofit, Women in Music, was so crucial to having that comfort, that comfort zone in a sense of being able to go to industry events and go, there's my tribe, there's my crew,
Yes.
and having that sense that this is fun, this is important, it's my business, it's professional, but it's easy, it's comforting, and it's fun, and I feel connected, and that connection is so important, and it makes it almost it's frictionless, right? It's easy to then network and create relationships, and whether it's male or female, or whatever, whomever, right? It just you're at ease inside of your tribe and your connection points, and so I mean, and then you can take off and flourish in so many different ways, and so I'm such a big believer. I have such faith in the idea of community and using and working through your community, but with this entrance point, right, of making sure you find your right connection points, your comfort zone in a sense. And there's plenty of panels out there where we've talked about using your trade associations and your nonprofits and your professional organization, or organizations in the music industry to do X, Y, and Z, whatever your goals and objectives are to getting there. And so I mean, we're all joiners in that sense, right? We've all majorly participated, but I encourage the audience out there to always look for that opportunity, whether it's Women in Music or the Recording Academy or the Music Managers Forum, or you're an independent label and you join A2IM, or an independent publisher as AIMP. All these amazing groups and organizations out there are great places to build that.
And
That's all I got to say right now.
it's about continuing the education as well. I mean,
Absolutely.
beauty and curse of the music industry is it's always changing. I mean, especially at the moment with technology and you're trying to stay on top of what the next app is, or the next TikTok or whatever it is. It's just trying to not only be aware of it, but understand it and work it. I mean, I was in management many years ago, and I'm going to be honest, the thought of having to do all of the social media and everything else on top of that, I mean, it's a lot. And, we never stop learning, regardless of what it is. And I think that's important. And you can only really do that well when you're part of another organization who can say, hey, you should be aware of this, or are you aware of this law that is unfair that needs to be fixed? There's all of those things, as well as, quite honestly, surrounding yourself by good peers who can be your sounding board, and when necessary, being that cone of silence when you just need to vent.
Yeah.
Can you believe this?
That's important.
Yeah, that's really important.
Education is so important, absolutely. And it's not just the adaptation of new technologies, right, and understanding that, but exactly what you were saying, Sharon, about understanding the laws and the challenges of the various issues around it. So, you might be someone who's like super adept at new technologies, but if you don't understand how those create music licensing challenges on Capitol Hill with the CRB and the Copyright Office, if you don't understand, sort of the interplay of what's happening between sort of acquisition of publishing catalog and music distribution platforms, the DSPs and such. It's like, if you don't understand their challenges in their business and in the legislative and in the regulatory areas, you're not really getting it right. You're just
one little piece. You got to see the whole ecosystem to see how it all interconnects. Yeah,
exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I find, also now as a new professor, I mean, I'm constantly learning how to, I'm relying on my network to teach me about what's going on and what I need to be paying attention to, what I need to be teaching my students, the next generation. Sharon and I have an organization called NYC3, which does just that. It's always trying to educate the music publishing community on the current issues and trends and laws and advocacy issues that we all should be aware of, because it's complicated. It's not easy to just pick up, and it's not easy just to read a billboard. Sometimes you just need to be it to be explained to you. Nita,
You also need to be in it.
and you need to be in it. Yeah. Nita, as an attorney as well, I mean, you are always having to keep up. And Yasmin, you're working with members of all different genres of music. Like, how do you keep up with everything? What are your tips to keeping up? What are you reading? What are you going to? How do you do it?
You want to go first?
Sure. I'm online a lot right now, against the backdrop of the pandemic. I'm utilizing social media so much. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Twitch. I'm all the places where I think music creators are going to be at. Sometimes I'm just a lurker and looking at it. I'm not necessarily participating myself in it, but I'm just looking to see, what are where are the people at? Where are people consuming music? And that's how I'm working now. Prior to the pandemic, I relied a lot on, people that were on the ground in the studios, out on the streets. Let's go grab a coffee. What are you listening to? What's up? But, keeping it super casual and, just that's how you kind of keep with the rhythm of what's happening in the streets, for lack of a better term. Because sometimes, as a mom, I can't always make the shows at night. So I have to really rely on the conversations that I'm having with people. And then I'll take a listen to music and keep up that way.
Which I think is really important, because a lot of our students are interested in working with talent, whether it's working with actresses, our theater students, or they're actresses themselves, or working in music as like an A&R person, or a publisher working with songwriters. That's very interesting what you say, Yasmin, how you go where the music makers are to find them, to learn their language.
Yeah. And I think, when I was working at Carnegie Hall and I developed this international online community, we collaborated with, musicians in South Africa. We collaborated with musicians in Mexico, a number of Grammy award-winning artists that we worked with to lead creative workshops, Indonesia, India. I mean, I was literally all over the world, but I went to these places as a follow-up, but it all started online. So, you can have these creative conversations online. And the internet is just, it's an amazing resource for us.
Yeah.
There's so much out there.
Can you talk about how you break the ice online? I mean, you've got the Recording Academy as a real easy icebreaker, but how do you cold call and approach an artist?
So I've been working on cold calling for many, many years. I will say that when I made the transition, going from music education, which was my prior career, and making the transition into music business, I was able to make that transition by doing cold calls and asking people, hey, can I pick your brain? Hi, I'm curious, I have some interest in this, quote unquote, whatever the theme was. Would you mind if I could just schedule 15 minutes to pick your brain about it? Because I think people generally want to be helpful. I think people also the psychology of folks, they like to share information about themselves, share what they know. I think that's an inherent trait that many, many people have. So that keeping that in mind takes away the nervousness you might have about cold calling. And so I've been doing it for years. I mean, I have been doing it the past couple of weeks, in fact, because I'm trying to pick people's brains about reggaeton music. So I think it's a skill too. So you come up with a couple of different, introductions for yourself that you have in your back pocket, and some of them work. And if they don't, you evolve it and you come up with a new little script.
And the introduction is just like a little mini elevator pitch, just to kind of get through, so they know who you are and why you're calling, and why
Yep.
you think they're so important.
Yes, super important. Yeah, yeah.
Right. I mean, that's why why you want them to be your whatever you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah,
Interesting.
and people are helpful. They want to help you as well. So I think that's also something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
know,
I have this strategy where I go through, sort of two different approaches, and somewhere in the middle it works, which is, one is you cast a net of 100 to get one, which
yeah.
is just, you kind of spread it out. I kind of will go after many, right? Go after many, and I'll get a couple of good ones, and everybody else will be busy, but that's okay because I got a couple of good ones, and I just spread that net out. But the other one is, in that list of the 100 or the 200, I do pick those 5 or those 6 that I really, really want to connect with, and make a real plan around it, right? Which is, I will email them every other week, right? Like something that's not really bugging them every day, but staying in their radar and their universe, because maybe I know I get very busy and I get a whole lot of folks, but by the third ask or so, not that I want everyone to email me a bunch of times, but by the third ask, I'll kind of come around and go, let's schedule a Zoom or a phone call. And maybe there is a little bit of me that loves to see the persistence of people, because I know I was that myself. And that there's something about the work ethic of people that is reflective too of the people I want to work with. And if I'm seeing it in action by persistence, awesome. I know that that's somebody I probably want to work with, who reminds me of me or whatever, when I was a hard little worker. So,
No,
and
that's really cool and helpful. Did you have something, Sharon?
Yeah, quite honestly, you just never know who you're going to end up working with and for.
Yeah.
That person you may have met 20 years ago, you could be working with them. I mean, it's just having working relationships with as many people as possible in as many areas as possible, because it is such a broad industry. And I don't know about you guys, but I was at college getting my qualifications to go to med school when I was booking bands, and I remember just being on a phone call with a booking agent, like, wait, you do this for a living? And the light bulb went off, and I got a place at med school, and my parents let me take a year off to get music out of my system. And needless to say, I
It
never
never
went to
did.
because people don't understand often. I think they do now, more now, but I think people don't understand the complexity of the business and the myriad of jobs that exist behind it. My parents were like, but you can't do that. You don't play anything, and you're not a musician. Well, how can you possibly do that? So that process of, I worked in a lot of different areas at first. My very first job was at a record label called PRT in London, and I answered the phones, and they had 2 recording studios and a pressing plant and a record label, and I got to be immersed in all of those, and it was great. And I learned things I didn't want to do, and I learned things I did want to do, and just being aware of all of the choices that knowing what you don't want to do is as important.
Yeah, isn't that true? Speaking of networking, most of my my business was built, a long time ago too, before the internet and before this whole social media, where everything was done on phone calls. Through phone calls, I would get together with my friends and my friends that worked at publishing companies. Are you going to go to the AIMP thing tonight? Okay, great, let's go. I'll meet you for a drink beforehand, and we'll go together. And so I'd have a buddy to go with. That was always great. Um, and we, by the way, we would learn about things with the Billboard calendar. Every week, Billboard would publish a calendar of events that were happening in New York. And when I was president of Women in Music, I caught on to that and I put all of our events in Billboard, and we had very successful events because that's where everyone relied on that calendar and would show up for those events. But building a network, building your network and just publicly, in front of people, at events, at a nightclub, at a panel, and everyone's sitting, chatting in the back of the room, and you're with little groups of people. Do you guys have any good icebreakers for those situations? I mean, it's really hard and we were all masters of the game at this point, but I thought it would be interesting to share with some of our students, like how you go about breaking the ice when you're at a NARIS event, for example, a cocktail party or whatever. You really don't know anybody. How do you get into a conversation with people?
It's a lot of them, I do it instinctually. What's that, Sharon?
Ask questions. Most people love to talk, and just giving them that. So what do you do?
First and foremost, I think it's so important to be authentic, right? It's so important to just be real and not be full of nervousness and fears and intimidation, right? Just get into that comfort zone I talked about, right? However that works. And there's going to be different personalities in the room, right? There's different personalities in every room. And I do sit there and I think about the fact that some folks are going to bond with a particular, another fellow creative, a songwriter in the room, whereas another person might be bonding with the nerd in the room who wants to talk about metadata. And another, or stay up till 6 in the morning talking about, another person in the room. Well, there's so many different personalities, so you have to find your kind, and so part of it is about hunting around a little bit. You come into that cocktail party or whatever for NARIS or whatever, and finding your kind is about kind of checking everybody out and being okay to leave. Like when you start talking to someone, you go, it's not my kind. Move on to the next one. Don't
Being
wait.
able to circulate is really important.
Yeah. I think it's also helpful. Nita, you're cracking me up with some of this stuff that you're saying. I do think, just to think like in actual terms, like what can you do? You walk into a room, I would say circle the room a couple of times just to get the lay of the land. I think that's really helpful. Eyeball a couple of people, maybe someone's wearing like a cool shirt with a band shirt or something that can be a conversation starter. And I think once, you start going to a number of events, you're going to start recognizing faces. There's another, conversation starter. Hey, didn't I see you at this event, blah, 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 last week. So I think those are some like real applicable ways to get that going.
That's good too. And also, I think there's like this, the code, which is to be kind to your friends. So, if I'm sitting in a semicircle with 3 people and Sharon walked up and didn't know them, I would immediately go, oh, do you guys know Sharon? Sharon works at so-and-so, or, introducing one another, being a buddy to your friends, helping people break the ice. And
we do presume sometimes that we all know one another, and sometimes we just don't.
I know.
It's like, how do you not know this person?
I know.
Or we can't remember their name, so please help me.
Oh, God, yes. Hey.
Hey. How are you doing? Hey, you.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, I hate that with
you.
It's so funny. Do you guys remember my colleague Rosemary, who worked in my office? She and I were kind of built the same. We had the same kind of hair, and people would go up to her and to me and always like, but you mostly to her, because people thought she was me and vice versa. It was just the craziest thing. And she would just hug them and go, oh, good to see you.
You. Oh, you.
The C-sec dinner, the big C-sec dinner, she would do that. It was very funny. Anyway, so what a hell of a year it's been. I mean, it's just been so weird. And I've talked to everybody. everyone keeps saying the same thing, like, as weird as it's been, it's like, don't tell anybody, but I kind of like this. I'm really enjoying my Zoom room. I have like my command center here, all my books, everything in front of me. I really love that part of it. Um, but I've never worked harder. I mean, I'm working crazy hours, and I know you are too. Can you talk about this working at home thing and
Hmm.
how you are managing it, and what do we think is gonna how is this gonna
I'm buying double the amount of Kleenex that I used to.
yeah,
I'm just saying,
uh,
there's a little more drama that happens when you're just here in the apartment by yourself. It's just,
Yeah.
I think we're missing people, of course. We're missing all of that human interaction. Yes, there's definitely a part of me that went, it's so nice to have our command center and just have this very easy universe and not have to be battling the subway and hair and nails and what do I wear today from the bottom down? No, decisions that need to be made, just this. And,
Pants on.
don't stand up.
I won't. and so there's a pros and cons to the situation, I think. And but how we're dealing with it is that balance between and having gratitude, first of all, constantly really engaging in gratitude exercises. I mean, I wake up in the morning and it's a bit of a, you were asking earlier about how to keep up with all of the information out there. And I definitely have a very disciplined thing. I mean, I used to be a musician and I stayed up in the studio till 7 a.m. and then went to a day job, and it was a crazy time in life. Now I'm like very structured, and I love the benefits that come from having a very disciplined and structured life. I'm like, I wish I could talk to my 20 something self and tell myself it's okay to have discipline. Like, get up, read for that first hour or two, before everything starts for the day, and go get a run or do yoga or whatever. And so, doing those things and having that has really kept me mentally healthy despite the boxes of Kleenex. And I think that that's how I get through it is through actually the discipline of routine and having structure around the day, and then knowing I have that to look forward to at 7 p.m., even if it's Netflix and a cupcake in front of the TV, knowing
Mommy juice.
I have it. What is it for you?
Mommy juice.
Mommy juice.
Speaking of mommies, Yasmin, I mean, God, how the hell are you doing? 2 children she has under the age of 2, plus a full-time gig. You fortunately were able to find this cool space in your above your garage that you made into this darling studio, by the way. It's very cute.
Yeah.
Tell me, how are you managing the mommy and the job thing? A lot of people are having a problem with this.
Yeah. Well, I started therapy last week because I finally just couldn't take it anymore. It's a lot. Prior to the pandemic, my statement was it takes a village to raise a kid, and my village consisted of our babysitter and our neighbors and extended family and stuff like that. That all went away with the pandemic. It's just been my husband and I, and we were thankfully able to bring our babysitter back, but we didn't have our babysitter for a significant amount of time. And that was hard. That was really hard. It was hard to have conference calls like this. It was just incredibly difficult. So, having the extra help and, creating structure for ourselves. I've blocked off times in my day where I've said, sorry, I have to be with my children here. 1 to 3, we can have all the conference calls that we want. But at this time I can't.
I hate to say putting your foot down, but like, being okay to demand certain time for yourself. You have to do that. You have to stop and say, I'm sorry, I have to take my son to a baseball practice or whatever.
Yeah. And I hope that, I've been I've been providing folks that I work with a lot of grace because we're all in our spaces and, you know, things happen. One day I was having a conference call and my son came down and had blood coming out of his nose because he fell and he knocked his nose. And I had to get off the conference call. I'm like, I have to go. I'm so sorry. And, you know, I was lucky enough that my colleagues gave me some grace and understanding that I was having an emergency at home. I had to go. That was the top priority. So that's kind of how I've been maneuvering it, but it's been hard. I don't have the perfect answer for it. It's been incredibly difficult. And I think the pandemic has been the great equalizer for a lot of people. They understand now the plight of working moms, you know, particularly their partners. I think they probably understand that. We've unfortunately we've been given the brunt of this during the whole part of the pandemic because we're still managing the household, still taking care of children, still working, trying, you know, all of this stuff. It's been a lot.
It's hard, and it's also very very emotionally stressful. You know, it is. A lot of people have not been doing well mentally through this period of time. There's a tremendous amount of loneliness. You know, people have lost jobs, lost work. A lot of our work is half of what it used to be. So there's that concern and the fear of what your future looks like. You know, it's really challenging. I know that Music Cares, which is a wonderful foundation part of the Recording Academy, is there to help people who are struggling with issues, whether they're substance abuse, mental health issues. They offer tremendous support to those in our industry. You don't even have to be a member. You just reach out to Music Cares, and you will get some help through there, some support. And it's not just Music Cares. Broadway Cares is around. There's other organizations too that are there. But if you are suffering from mental health issues, reach out. Don't suffer alone. You know, our industries are, especially these creative industries, where people tend to be a little more creative, and you know, especially their jobs are up and down. You have a lot of reason to be challenged, you know. So just know that there are definitely organizations, and if any of our students are needing any assistance, you can reach out to me and I'll find one of those resources for you, because there are many of them in our industry. I just want to sort of finish and wrap up our conversation with, you know, this pandemic year that's been, you know, has brought so many amazing moments, and also, you know, so many amazing challenges. What do you see happening in the future? Do you see a huge shift? Do you think in the entertainment industry? Certainly, we all work on the industry side, except for Yasmin is a performer as well. Nita's a former performer. We still perform, but Yasmin does really like more than we do. And but aside from that, you know, do you think that we're going to do more working from home in the industry, or do you think it'll eventually come back? Nita's in Manhattan. She lives right in the city.
I'm looking at all those empty office spaces and all those skyscrapers going, I hope people go back to the office. But I definitely had that image, that vision in my head this morning, like, what if this is a ghost town for years and years and years? So I don't know the answer, because we see companies, very large companies, reporting that they are going to, you know, allow their workforces to work from home indefinitely. And then I also hear of companies who say, no, you know, we just renewed our lease and we're thinking we'll be coming back in the summer. So I think there's a mixed bag, you know, here in New York, especially.
A blend. I think I think there have been pros and cons for everybody. And the fact that, you know, for anybody who's commuting or, you know, not having to spend an hour each way, that's a day out of your week, effectively just getting back and forth, which, you know, is suddenly being time in which you can be productive, or spending more time with your children, or, you know, catching up on other things that you otherwise wouldn't have time for, whether it's reading the trades or emails, whatever. So I'd like to think it will be a blend. I have to say, ironically, we've had more accessibility to people because of Zoom, quite honestly.
Yeah.
That's been quite nice, being able to
Yeah.
have access to this whole other world. I mean, it's been hard to pick, to be honest. There's been so much choice. It's like, I want to see all of these webinars, but I have to pick a certain amount. But it's,
I hope that part of it doesn't change, that there's going to continue, like, you know, the organizations will continue to do these webinars so that we can join California and join a
Right.
London panel and
Yeah.
watch them. I mean, be a part of it.
I hope so. I
Yeah.
hope so.
So
And I love it. For Music Managers Forum, we had a couple of weeks ago or so, or a few weeks ago, we had a networking mixture with the MMF of Canada and MMF of Mexico. And I love that we could all just sort of sit in this virtual, well, it was a semi-virtual world, our real faces, but we got to click at tables in
Yes.
the
Right.
virtual space and say, we want to sit here, and then move on when the conversation got boring and go to another table. And that was awesome. And meet people. And we have one coming up like in a month or so with the Music Managers Forum in Australia. And it'll be their breakfast and our dinner. And we will be doing a similar online networking. And I love that. I love that we would have never been able to have those things, right? Unless we all met
Well,
at
we
some
wouldn't have
global
thought of it.
conference.
Yeah.
I mean, it just wouldn't, we'd all like, well, we'll be at MEDEM. I'll see you there.
Yeah, that would have been
Right.
yeah. Or for some that go to South by Southwest from around.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I'm not going to
Speaking
Texas
of
anytime soon. I'm sorry.
There's a question that I didn't get to ask, and I really did want to ask it because it's such a huge part of our world today, and that's globalizing. You know, the globalization of all industries, but in particular, you know, in the music industry. And Nita, you've done so much work with globalizing and building women in music. That really is you are the one who's, I'm going to continue to give you the credit because you're the one who started it. You're the one
on a lot of airplanes.
I remember you starting it, and you traveled everywhere to build, you know, chapters, women in music chapters all over the world, and you finally did, and it's accomplished.
And we're still going. It's amazing that even during the pandemic, we were able to launch Women in Music South Africa this past fall, and we're in major talks with all sorts of, you know, massive markets and amazing women from all sorts of pockets. I mean, women in the different African nations, women in South America, you know, just going all around the world, planting the seeds, finding emerging female leaders who want to, and actually men as well, actually, who want to help start women in music chapters in their markets. And it's been great. And I mean, the whole goal, I mean, the whole idea was really, as we started to see some years ago, that it's not about America's number one, that the world, the music industry was going to start having that number one hit be Despacito or K-pop, or the fact that we were going to start reaching out, and our consumers and our fans would be reaching out into wanting different tastes. I mean, the power of the internet allows us to have that. We knew it was inevitable that we would start having that. And the way to really, I thought, empower women's businesses and careers was for them to be the ones in the room that were able to tap into a global network, that were able to go, you know what, yeah, I'm taking an artist over to Asia. I know 3 of the best booking agents in the Asian countries, you know, and being able to tap into that through this community, through Women in Music, was the idea. The goal was to do that. And so it's an ongoing process. And but now, you know, we went from the one chapter in New York to now having 26 chapters and growing, and over 10,000 members. And it's growing like wildfire. It's the thing is, we're still an all volunteer organization. And so it is a challenge, right? The growing pains of a nonprofit, of figuring out how to actually scale that, make that actually work without
Unbelievable.
us,
I mean, that
giving
is
up our
such
day
an
jobs.
accomplishment. You know, when the Women in Music had their global music summit, I attended it a couple months ago. I was just, you know, I was so high from it. It was so great. And I loved the international panels where we had these women from all over the world. And what I found so fascinating was that we all were talking about the same thing. We're all talking about gender inequities. We're all talking about, you know, equitable work environments, gender equity. It was all the same stuff, and diversifying workforces. Wasn't
It is
that fascinating?
amazing. There's common it's amazing. It is amazing that no matter where we go, yeah, unfortunately, we have an issue or a challenge or inequity. What is it does come in different packages. I remember when I went to Romania and we were launching Women in Music Romania, that the panel at their big conference there in Bucharest was about the fact that actually as a communist country, men and women were treated as equals, right? It's just right that it is an what is that word? I forgot it right now, but it's very much of a meritocracy, and it's very much about being equals. And so the older generation was of females were much more used to something that we would call feminism here, and saw that it was starting when there was no longer a communist regime and there was more capitalism, that now with the younger generation, they're starting to see the challenges and the issues that we're all unfortunately too used to here in the United States. And so it's that interesting thing, because the older women on the panel were like, why do we need a women in music? Right? And so it was very, very interesting. On the other hand, we had at MEDA Music Conference some years ago, actually that's where our global leadership, well, our Global Women's Summit started, is every year at MEDA, and we were doing for many years now a women's leadership summit there of about 120 women from all around the world in the music industry gathering. And
MEDA, by the way, is an international music conference that occurs every year in France.
yes, exactly. And it's like, I think over 61 or 62 years old. It's been around for a long time. So at that, the very first one we had done of those women in music summits was that we did have women on stage. And I remember the women in Australia saying that they think they're very close to 50-50 in terms of female leadership in senior management in their music industry. Whereas in France, they were going, we don't even have one woman. And I was like, Australia, talk to France, go teach them what y'all did there. But I mean, now that we're starting to do more data studies, we're seeing it's not necessarily quite true, but it is in a way. I mean, it is amazing and surprising to see some societies, some markets, some industries, women have gotten there quicker than others. But yes, the issue is still there overall in terms of our common needs, our common challenges. It's just the numbers are different. That's all.
And branching out into other markets outside of the United States is just inevitable. And it also is a tremendous amount of opportunity for my students. It's like, don't even just think about New York, don't think about the United States, think about the world. There's so much out there.
Yeah, and euros spend the same as dollars.
Yeah.
We have men.
I'm just saying. Half of my business is with mainly European, but some Southeast Asian companies. But yeah, I mean, you have a hit, and if you can, hopefully it goes beyond these shores, but also having I work in publishing, so I'm always putting either collaborations together or finding homes for songs. And when you have a song that does really well and in a territory, and sometimes you have the luxury of it doing well in different languages, it's like, yes,
yeah,
with that writer, it's just like, it doesn't matter at the end. As songs register properly and they can collect on it, it's just found money. And people need to think bigger. They definitely, I because I'm from England, I guess I never really had that issue, and the people I always worked for were global minded, so I've never been put in a box as far as you had only thought about the US. But yeah, the opportunities are just there's so many opportunities, and you have to be open to them and network there as much as you network here.
So I'm going to end this with one last question that is a little near and dear to my heart, and I have spoken about it publicly many, many times. And that is having it all. How do we have it all? This is a very dynamic business to be in. It is so interesting and fun and exciting and social. You can go out, be with your friends, go home, go to work the next day, have a crazy work day, then do the same thing, going out, doing business again. Before you know it, you have forgotten to have children. Can we discuss having it all? How do you have a dynamic career like this with all of its demands and then also satisfy the need and want to have a family life? Who would like to speak to
I'm
that?
going to jump in, right? Because Linda, I remember when you so articulately said that at our Mothers in Music panel many years ago. And I thought, and I still, it resonates with me still today because I meet so many women that are doing exactly that. And I think I was definitely one of them, right? I didn't get married till I was in my 40s. I was busy being a musician and doing exactly that, right? Going out, doing it all over again. Da, da, da. The music industry has, in a way, that occupational hazard to it, in a certain sense, that we get into the flow of all of the fabulousness or the craziness or the whatever of it. And
Traveling, the events, the black tie affairs. I mean, it's very intoxicating.
One year moves to the next, and the next year, you know, you've lost a decade. It's like, hold on a second.
Yeah. Yeah. Linda, I remember a number of years ago when I had transferred over to the New York office, and Linda pulled me over and she goes, Yasmin, I just have to tell you that infertility is alive and well. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I just moved here. I'm looking for a boyfriend. I don't know if this is gonna happen, blah, blah. Oh my God. You know, and I'm open about this. It took me a very long time to get pregnant. I went through a number of fertility treatments. It was a struggle. It was my third job at the time, in addition to the job I had in my music career that I continued. It took a very long time, and I got married later. I had kids. I had my first kid when I turned 40. So it was hard, but it was something that I wanted. But you're right. It's like, it's a major occupational hazard, and I wish, thank you for letting me know that a number of years ago, because it was something I was like, oh my God, I really want to get this and make it happen.
I've been known to corner young women and tell them, don't forget to have that baby if that's what you're wanting.
Yeah.
In my own personal story, I also got married in my early 40s and tried to have a child, and unsuccessfully. I was too old at the time, and or my eggs were too old, and I ended up adopting. My child is adopted. Thank God, because he was the child I was meant to have. But I do like to remind young women that if you do want to have a family, it's totally fine. Just put it on your agenda. Put it on your agenda. You have to make the time, because Prince Charming does not just come knocking at your door. You have got to go out and make that part of it a priority. Make that part of wanting a family life a priority, and you can do it. You can have it all.
Well, you have to work at it like anything else.
Exactly.
You have to make time for your social life and make time for all of these things, but it is about finding that balance, and it's not easy. We all oh my God, struggle with that.
It's not easy.
Yeah, it's hard. But
I think it's also in music too. I think it's okay to say, hey, I want to have a family. There shouldn't be any embarrassment in saying I want to have a family. For some reason, I think a lot of people that work in the industry, they leave their family life on the side and they don't, bring it into conversations, but it's a part of who we are, and if you don't want to have a kid, you don't want to have a kid either. I mean, that's okay too, but I think we all need to be more comfortable with it.
I think that's a whole other panel discussion, but there is an issue there. I mean, there is an issue there with revealing your personal desires to your fellow male colleagues, even because all of a sudden they assume, oh, you've got a child, well then she's not going to be available to travel, she's not going to be available to do this or that. So you keep a lot of your personal life from your colleagues, because you don't want them to disregard you when it comes time for promotions, when it comes time for opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
More when I had Stella. I was constantly on a plane. But I was fortunate enough to have a really great partner and have care available. You had to pay for it, but you make it work. You just do.
Yeah.
Like, how can you do this? It's like, you know what? I don't know, but you do.
I know. Anyway, we could talk all day. It's so good to spend some time with you, my sweet friends. I hope that we can get together and have a dinner in the city soon.
Yeah.
Oh my
Can't
God.
wait.
Missing you guys. I
Go up
just
to the
really,
Marinac and visit with us.
I know.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I have seen Sharon a few times, I must say. We have gotten together. And I'd love to see you guys, but I really just want to thank you for being a part of ArtBeast, this fabulous festival that's going on this weekend, and hope that you'll tune in. This will be airing on Saturday from 3:30 to 5 with a little talk back afterwards. Thanks for coming, everybody. Appreciate it. Nita
Thanks for
Reynolds,
having
Thanks for
Thanks for
having me.
inviting
Karen
us.
Tapper, Yasmin De Souza. Thank you.
Thanks.